I'm Morgan Radford.
And I'm Ellison. Barbara Aaron is off today, and we began this hour with breaking news out of Afghanistan as the United States reaches a key milestone. A dramatic turning point today as General Scott Miller, the commander of U.S. forces there, officially stepped down earlier today. He turns command over to U.S. Central Command. The historic move marks a symbolic end to nearly 20 years of military operations in that country. This as the Taliban threat looms even larger.
NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube is following today's events for us in Kabul, Afghanistan. And we also have retired Army Colonel and NBC News military analyst Jack Jacobs, who's joining us. Let's go ahead, though, and begin with Courtney there in Kabul. Courtney, the United States has been withdrawing from Afghanistan now for weeks. So talk about why today's events are so significant. What is different today?
So today was really the symbolic end of the U.S. military mission here in Afghanistan. As you mentioned, General Scott Miller handed over his authorities to General Frank McKenzie, but that was also really symbolic, too, because General McKenzie is already the commander of U.S. Central Command, so he's got command of all the U.S. military in this entire region. He already had all the authorities that General Miller handed over. But with Miller handing over and stepping down as the commanding general of U.S. Forces Afghanistan, that really marks the end of what is now nearly a 2-decade-long war and conflict here in Afghanistan. Now, as you know well, Morgan, President Biden announced in April that the U.S. was going to completely withdraw all troops. Sorry, it's a little loud here. Withdraw all troops from Afghanistan by September 11th. We heard soon after that, in fact, the U.S. military was moving much faster than that. And it was mainly a security reason. They realized that once they announced that the U.S. was going to leave here, and there were only somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 total troops here at the time, that those troops were really in danger. General Miller, as the head of the war here, he started moving people and equipment out quickly. They all could have been out by early July, but now the Biden administration realized, as they see this Taliban offensive all throughout the country, they realized they needed to slow down a little bit. They needed to maintain a military mission here. But the reality is the U.S. military and the equipment, it's all out. What's maintaining here until the end of August is really the contractors who've been supporting the U.S. military here. And General McKenzie, as the new commander of U.S. Forces Afghanistan, also retains some authorities to conduct airstrikes against the Taliban should the Afghan military need the U.S. to help.
And Courtney, just very briefly here, I know that you spoke exclusively with General McKenzie from the plane. Can you give us a little bit more detail on what he told you?
Yeah, I mean, so he's like many military officials, they're concerned about this Taliban offensive all around the country. He said that the momentum is really trending towards the Taliban right now. But he also said that the Afghan military is making some smart moves. So far, the Taliban, while they've been able to take a lot of rural areas, they've not yet taken provincial capitals. And that's what gives General McKenzie some optimism, some hope that the Afghan military may be able to push back this offensive. He also spoke pretty highly of the Afghan Air Force. You know, they started from nothing more than a decade ago, Morgan, and now they are carrying out some airstrikes. They have the ability to operate on their own. The U.S. is actually providing them with a number of additional helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft before this military mission even ends here. The U.S. military mission ends here. And that is because they realize that that is the one asset that the Afghan government has that the Taliban doesn't, an air force. And they're trying to build that up and strengthen that as much as possible. One vulnerability that the Afghan Air Force really faces, though, is maintenance. And those contractors that I mentioned earlier who are now staying until the end of August, when they leave, the Afghan Air Force is going to struggle to be able to maintain their aircraft, especially with an increase in operational tempo with the U.S. military and the NATO forces leaving.
At a critical time when that country begins its transition. Courtney Kube there in Kabul for us. Courtney, thank you.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.